back again with the best albums of the month, the album highlights. This time we're talking about July. There has been some really good releases, but there's not been a lot of albums I've been loving. Maybe it's because I did have a bit of a slow period last week where I didn't hear as much as I probably would usually, so maybe I've missed out on some things. I haven't heard a few albums that I want to get to that I think could be some really good ones, so we shall see how it goes. But until then, there are some really good releases worth talking about. I want to start off by mentioning Okkyung Lee, because that album was one that I discovered in July, but it did actually come out in May. Definitely worth your time. A really, really lovely ambient release. Just a really interesting approach to ambient music that she has as an artist. It wasn't really big on some of her earlier stuff, but this new one really hit hard, and I feel like it's getting a bit overlooked, so definitely check that out. But it isn't technically a July release, but I still want to mention it anyway, because why the hell not? But in terms of what came out in July, we have one of the most surprising releases of the year, especially if you've watched my previous videos on this artist, because I was never a fan. I never expected to ever be a fan, but somehow this new album from Bladee, whatever you want to say, he made a good album. He made a good one. There was something about the vocal performances on this one that just seemed to really work for me. He often goes into his upper register, especially on his older stuff, that didn't really work, like his falsetto type singing always came across as really tedious to my ears. Maybe I need to go back and a new perspective could blossom, because I do like this one now, and perhaps I'm drained, who knows. But I do feel like there was something a lot more charming about this album. I do feel like he was blending in with the instrumentals on this one. The instrumentals on some of the tracks are fantastic. Like, there are some really phenomenal beats here. Certainly more engaged with this album than I was with Exeter, and that's weird because Exeter only came out a couple of months back. But the complete shift in how much I like this one compared to that one is quite tremendous, really. It's weird. I'm not exactly coming out of this album like I'm loving it, but I still think it's progress, and I still think I'm enjoying this quite a bit. That's enough for me for now. The fact that I've come out of a Bladee album liking it, I'm happy with that. Then we want to talk about Russolo Collective on Speak and Spell Records, because Speak and Spell this year has been fantastic. Some really, really great releases on there. I can't recommend any of the releases enough, especially this new Russolo Collective album here. You can only find it through Bandcamp though, so make sure you do a bit of digging, a bit of searching if you're really interested in it, because it's a really cool electronic release. And I've been propping up electronic music so much this year that it's probably getting a bit boring for you. I like the way that Russolo Collective went for something a little bit different compared to the EP that dropped last year. The progression is really impressive, and for a mixtape here, I'm only really excited to see where he's going to go next, because, you know, if a mixtape can be this good, then surely the full-length album, which might be coming this year or maybe early next year, I'm not entirely sure, maybe that could be even better. One of my favourite New Zealand bands at the moment, the Beths. They're just so lovely. I love the Beths. I don't think this was quite as good as the debut, but it doesn't need to be, because there's still so many stellar songs on here. And there's always that fear of like a sophomore slump. We're looking at you, Fontaine's DC, yes we are, we're looking at you. But the Beths just completely went against that and gave us some really fantastic tracks like Acrid and Dying to Believe, which I think are some of their best to date. But even Future Me Hates Me got a little bit overlooked, underrated in 2018. So I feel like if you want to try out any of their stuff, check out this and check out their debut too, because they're just so good. They're so good at making catchy power pop tunes. Rival Consoles next. Literally reviewed this yesterday. Obviously it's August now, but this did come out in July, so it is worth bringing up in this video here. Man, you know what? Rival Consoles has been done dirty for years. They're on Race Tapes, which is a pretty strong indie music label, but I don't know, rival consoles just never really seems to get the props they deserve. He's a really talented guy, making some really interesting and detailed IDM, I guess you could call it. Micro house might be a better term to use for this album specifically anyway. And he's been at it for such a long time and been putting out some really stellar releases, especially Persona, which came out in 2018. Wish I didn't miss that when it initially came out, because it was a really great album. And this one is so close to being as good as that one, but there's still so many great tracks on there that you just don't want to be giving it a miss, especially if you're wanting to dig deeper into micro house or any electronic genres, because this is definitely worth your time. I had skipped album of the month last month because I didn't think it was fully necessary, because I had just done the mid-year list of all my favorites, but I'm bringing it back for July, and you can probably guess that my album of the month, if you know me well, is, of course, Lianne La Havas. I feel like before this even came out, I was already willing to say it was one of the best albums of the year. I just had that much hype for it. I'm honestly not sure the last time I was that confident in an album being great. Like, I really can't think of many albums where before they're coming out, I'm like, this is definitely going to be great. The last time, honestly, might have been Julia Holter. I was convinced she was not going to drop a dud with Aviary, and then she dropped a fantastic album there. And I feel like it's been since then, I thought an album would be just great, and it ended up being great. She's just so reliable as an artist. She knows her strengths. She plays to them to her best on this album, perhaps better than she ever has. And the wait since the last album was absolutely worth it, because she is just putting out some amazing vocal performances here. It's a much more organic sounding album compared to Blood, even though they're probably about equal quality, to be honest, because they both have different kinds of strengths. That album was a bit peppier, a bit chirpier, had some really poppy tracks, whereas this one strips it down to some really, really beautiful instrumentals, and you're often just falling in love with her voice, because that's really all you need anyway. I think I forgot to say this in my review, but I may as well say it now, because the way the instruments are recorded, particularly the guitar on this album, it definitely reminds me of what you would hear on an Afro-Cuban jazz album, a genre that probably deserves way more attention than it gets. But there's something so crystal clear about the way guitars sound on that kind of music, you know, those kind of albums. And there's something about this album here with just how natural everything flows, especially on tracks like Green Papaya. Like, it's just to die for. It is absolutely to die for. And then you've got the fact that she is willing to take a huge risk by doing a Radiohead cover of all things on your self-titled album. Come on, man. How can you not praise this album? How can you not? I can't praise it any more than I am. There's just too much to say. It is so, so good. Easily album of the month for July, and easily going to be one of the best albums of the year by the time December comes. And I hope you agree with me on that, and I hope you've checked it out. And that's it for the July album highlights. As always, a list of my favorite songs of the month will pop up there too. The ones I've been liking the most and the ones that I've been playing the most. And that's it, the best albums of the month. Let me know your favorites that have come out this past month. Let me know your thoughts on my favorites, if you agree or disagree. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching my video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and goodbye.